The sterile, antiseptic scent of the hospital halls clung to Michael Sterling like a shroud, a stark contrast to the familiar aroma of his bespoke office and luxurious penthouse. He moved with a frenetic energy, his expensive Italian leather shoes echoing a rapid rhythm against the polished linoleum. His usually composed features, often described as chiseled and unyielding in corporate boardrooms, were currently a mask of raw worry, his brow furrowed deeply, eyes darting anxiously from one closed door to the next. This was not the Michael Sterling the world knew, the self-made tech mogul whose name was synonymous with innovation and ruthless efficiency. This was a man stripped bare of his usual armor, vulnerable and utterly helpless. Michael Sterling, at 38, was a titan in the technology world, a relentless visionary who had built an empire from nothing. His journey began not in Silicon Valley, but in the gritty, unforgiving streets of a forgotten neighborhood, a testament to his sheer will and intellect. He had clawed his way out of poverty, driven by a deep-seated need to prove himself, to escape the shadows of a past he rarely spoke of. His company, Sterling Innovations, was a global powerhouse, its products embedded in the daily lives of millions. He commanded respect, wielded influence, and effortlessly navigated the complex dance of high finance. His personal life, however, was a different story. His sleek, ultra-modern penthouse apartment, perched high above the bustling metropolis of an iconic American city, offered breathtaking panoramic views, yet often felt cavernously empty. He had achieved every material aspiration, yet a quiet hollowness frequently echoed through the expensive silence. Today, however, that quiet emptiness was replaced by a deafening roar of fear. His beloved younger sister Emily, the one constant source of warmth and unconditional affection in his tumultuous life, had been involved in a horrific car accident. She was currently behind one of those imposing, unyielding doors, undergoing emergency surgery. The words of the attending physician, describing the severity of her injuries, still echoed in his ears, a chilling counterpoint to the relentless beeping of unseen medical equipment. He felt utterly overwhelmed, a sensation so foreign to him that it bordered on physical pain. Every instinct screamed at him to fix it, to throw money at the problem, to leverage his connections. But here, in this unforgiving sanctuary of desperation and hope, his power was meaningless. He was simply Michael, a frightened brother, waiting. The helplessness was a bitter pill, reminding him of moments from his childhood when circumstances had conspired against him, and he had been powerless to protect those he loved. His carefully constructed facade of control was cracking, revealing the raw, exposed nerves beneath. He tried to take deep, calming breaths, but the air felt thin, laden with the metallic tang of fear and disinfectant. His mind raced, replaying the frantic call, the sirens, the endless drive to the emergency room, each memory twisting the knot in his stomach tighter. He yearned to be in there with her, to offer comfort, to somehow absorb her pain, but all he could do was wait. This unexpected crisis had unearthed a vulnerability he thought he had long since buried under layers of success and ambition. It was a stark reminder that some things, the most important things, were beyond the reach of his carefully cultivated power. The weight of it all pressed down on him, a crushing burden that overshadowed even the most complex business deals he had ever brokered. He felt like a lone ship tossed in a storm, his compass suddenly useless. This was a battle he couldn't win with a meticulously crafted strategy or a shrewd negotiation. This was life, raw and unpredictable, and he was merely a spectator in his own unfolding tragedy. Please subscribe to our channel for more compelling stories of life, fate, and unexpected encounters. The sterile air of the waiting room, thick with the scent of antiseptic and stale coffee, pressed in on Michael. Hours bled into one another, marked only by the hushed footsteps of nurses and the occasional jarring beep of medical equipment. He tried to immerse himself in the luminous screen of his tablet, a stream of urgent emails from his various ventures demanding his attention. Yet, the words blurred, the figures swam, and the towering deadlines felt utterly insignificant against the backdrop of Emily's precarious state. His usual laser-like focus had fractured into a million anxious pieces, each one a sharp pain in his chest. The hospital was a place he instinctively recoiled from, a stark clinical environment that resonated with ancient, deeply buried fears. It wasn't just the immediate terror for Emily's well-being, it was the suffocating reminder of helplessness. Success, he'd discovered, could buy many things: power, comfort, influence, but it held no sway over the indifferent march of illness or the sudden, brutal hand of fate. Here, in these coldly lit corridors, Michael Sterling, the formidable tech mogul, was simply another worried brother, stripped bare of his usual armor. His mind replayed snippets of conversations, echoes of past betrayals that had forged the impenetrable shell around his heart. The parents who left, the friends who faded, the one love he'd pushed away in his ruthless ascent. He had built an empire to insulate himself from loss, to prove his worth, to ensure he would never again be at the mercy of others. Yet, staring at the closed doors of the operating theater, he felt that familiar, chilling current of helplessness trickle down his spine. The fear of losing Emily, the last true connection to his fragmented past, was overwhelming. It wasn't just her life hanging in the balance. It was a fragile piece of his own history, a beacon reminding him of what little good remained from his early years. He stood abruptly, his pacing resuming its restless rhythm across the polished linoleum floor. He caught the eye of a passing nurse, a young woman with tired eyes. "Excuse me," he began, his voice betraying a hint of his characteristic authority. "I need an update on Emily Sterling. Her surgery. Has there been any word?" The nurse offered a sympathetic, if weary, smile. "Mr. Sterling, I understand your concern, but the surgical team will update you as soon as they have any news. We follow strict protocols to ensure accurate information is delivered directly from the doctors." Her tone was polite, professional, yet utterly unyielding. His influence, his wealth, his carefully cultivated persona meant nothing here. He was just another family member, subject to the same agonizing weight as everyone else. Frustration simmered beneath his composed exterior. He wanted to demand, to pay, to force the answers from them, but he knew it was futile. This was a realm where money held no sway, where human biology and medical expertise dictated the pace. He ran a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair, the carefully constructed facade of control beginning to crack. He tried to rationalize it, to tell himself that doctors were doing their best, that Emily was strong, that everything would be fine, but the logical assurances felt flimsy, easily shredded by the raw anxiety gnawing at his gut. He pulled out his phone again, not to work, but simply to hold something, anything, that felt tangible and controllable. He scrolled through news feeds, headlines about his latest acquisition, market fluctuations, philanthropic donations. None of it provided solace. Instead, it highlighted the chasm between his public image of unshakable success and the trembling, vulnerable man currently trapped in a hospital waiting room. He felt a profound sense of isolation, the kind that wealth often created, separating him from the ordinary struggles of others. He knew no one within these walls, no familiar face to offer a word of comfort or shared dread. The scent of antiseptic, a constant, cloying presence, stirred memories of his mother's final days, a time of profound loss he had vowed never to revisit. He was Michael Sterling, the billionaire, yet in this moment he felt utterly and irrevocably alone, haunted by the specter of yet another irreplaceable loss. The weight of his past, his ambition, and the sudden crushing reality of his present converged, creating an almost unbearable emotional tumult within him. He was a man accustomed to solving problems, to orchestrating outcomes. But here he was merely a bystander, at the mercy of forces far beyond his control. Lost in the labyrinth of his own anxieties, Michael eventually found himself adrift in the sterile corridors, the scent of antiseptic clinging stubbornly to everything, the relentless hum of unseen machinery, the occasional hurried footsteps, and the hushed tones of medical professionals formed an oppressive symphony. He realized he hadn't eaten in hours, his stomach a hollow pit of dread. A quick glance at his watch confirmed the time, pushing past what felt like an eternity. Emily was still in surgery, and the waiting room had become a claustrophobic cage. He needed air, a change of scenery, anything to momentarily break the suffocating grip of helplessness. The cafeteria, he reasoned, would offer a brief respite, perhaps a cup of lukewarm coffee and a stale pastry. But more importantly, a temporary escape from the gnawing fear that had taken root deep within him. As he turned a corner, his mind still miles away, replaying every frantic moment from the accident, he collided squarely with someone. A tray clattered to the linoleum floor, its contents scattering with a pathetic splash. "Oh, my apologies, I wasn't looking," Michael mumbled, his voice hoarse with fatigue, already bending down to assist. His gaze swept from the spilled coffee and scattered plastic cutlery to the person he had just crashed into. His breath hitched, every muscle in his body freezing mid-action. The mundane hospital hallway, for a split second, became a vortex, pulling him back through 14 years of time, memory, and carefully constructed forgetfulness. Standing before him, wiping a stray drop of coffee from her pristine white nursing uniform, was Sarah. His Sarah. Or rather, the Sarah he had known. The Sarah he had loved. The Sarah he had inexplicably left behind all those years ago. The passage of time had etched faint lines around her eyes, a testament to life's trials and triumphs. But her eyes themselves, those deep, compassionate pools of brown, were unmistakably the same. They held the same quiet warmth, the same intelligent spark he remembered. Her once youthful exuberance had matured into a serene strength, yet a flicker of weariness betrayed the endless hours she undoubtedly dedicated to her demanding profession. Her hair, a shade darker now, was pulled back neatly, a few rebellious tendrils framing her face. She looked tired, undoubtedly, but there was an enduring beauty about her, a quiet grace that resonated through the sterile hospital environment. Michael felt a profound, almost dizzying shock. His carefully constructed composure, the impenetrable mask he wore for the world, shattered instantly, leaving him exposed and vulnerable. His mind raced, a chaotic kaleidoscope of shared laughter, whispered secrets, and the painful, abrupt ending that had cleaved their lives apart. He hadn't thought about her, not really, in years. Not consciously, at least. He'd buried that chapter deep, convinced himself it was a necessary sacrifice on the altar of his ambition. Now, here she was, undeniably real, standing just feet away, a living, breathing ghost from a past he had thought long dead and buried. He tried to speak, to articulate the whirlwind of emotions that threatened to overwhelm him, but his throat was constricted, his tongue thick and unresponsive. 100 questions, 1,000 unspoken apologies, and a lifetime of what-ifs jammed in his mind, vying for release. "Sarah?" he managed, the name a rusty whisper, thick with disbelief. His eyes, usually sharp and calculating, were wide with an almost childlike wonder, scanning her face as if to confirm her reality. Could this truly be her, in this place, at this moment? The universe, it seemed, had a cruel and ironic sense of humor. Sarah, too, was visibly stunned. Her eyes, initially filled with a polite, professional concern for the spilled tray, widened incrementally as she recognized him. A small, almost imperceptible gasp escaped her lips, quickly followed by a hesitant, almost shy smile. It wasn't the dazzling, uninhibited grin he remembered from their younger days, but a more reserved, knowing acknowledgement. "Michael?" she responded, her voice soft, a melody he hadn't realized he'd missed. There was no accusation in her tone, no overt bitterness, just a quiet surprise that mirrored his own. The years, he noted, had only added a deeper resonance to her voice. The air between them crackled with unspoken history, with the weight of 14 years of separate existences converging in an unexpected, profoundly unsettling moment. Michael felt a sudden, inexplicable tightening in his chest, a pang that was both painful and strangely nostalgic. He was a man who had built an empire on calculated risks and unwavering focus, yet in this instant, facing the woman he had once shared his deepest dreams with, he felt utterly unprepared, stripped of all his usual defenses. The millionaire, the tech mogul, the man of steel, was reduced to a speechless, trembling mess by the mere presence of his past. The memories, once suppressed and compartmentalized, surged forth, threatening to engulf him in their powerful undertow. He stood there, amidst the chaos of the spilled coffee, lost in the vast, echoing silence between them, the world outside this unexpected reunion fading into insignificance. Michael's gaze dropped, almost involuntarily, to the light blue scrubs Sarah was wearing beneath her lab coat. The sight registered slowly, cutting through the haze of shock and nostalgia that had enveloped him. Scrubs. Her presence here wasn't a mere coincidence, a fleeting visit. She worked here. The realization hit him with another jolt, replacing the romanticized vision of their past with the stark reality of her present. His carefully chosen words, intended to bridge the chasm of 14 years, caught in his throat. You work here?" he managed, the question sounding ridiculously mundane, almost childish, given the circumstances. He felt a sudden, inexplicable curiosity, a need to understand the trajectory her life had taken, the choices she had made that led her to this very hospital, this very hallway, at the exact moment his own carefully constructed world felt on the verge of collapse. His voice, usually firm and authoritative, carried an unfamiliar tremor. Sarah offered a small, knowing smile, a flicker of something he couldn't quite decipher in her eyes. Perhaps amusement at his obvious confusion, or a quiet resignation to the unexpected twist of fate. "Yes, Michael. I'm a nurse here," she confirmed, her voice calm and steady. "I've been working on the pediatric floor for the past 5 years." Pediatric floor. The words resonated strangely within him. His own sister, Emily, was just a few floors above, recovering from a traumatic accident, her condition still precarious. The irony was not lost on him. He, the man who had prided himself on controlling every variable in his life, was now at the mercy of chance encounters and medical professionals, one of whom happened to be the woman he had once loved, and, in his youthful arrogance, left behind. A nurse, Michael repeated, more to himself than to her, the title feeling both incredibly ordinary and profoundly significant. He tried to reconcile the ambitious, bright-eyed college student he remembered with the tired but resolute woman standing before him, her uniform a testament to a life of service and dedication. He had pursued wealth and power, building an empire that spanned continents. She had chosen a path of care and compassion, touching individual lives in a way his corporate acquisitions never could. Sarah nodded, her expression softening. "It's challenging but rewarding work," she explained, her gaze drifting slightly, as if recalling countless difficult days and small victories. "I'm currently assigned to a long-term care patient, a child with a severe chronic illness. He's been with us for months." Her voice took on a softer cadence, infused with a quiet dedication that disarmed Michael completely. It was clear this wasn't just a job for her. It was a calling, a significant part of her identity. Michael found himself listening intently, drawn in by her genuine passion. The hustle and bustle of the hospital, the constant chime of monitors, the hurried footsteps of staff, all faded into the background. His focus narrowed exclusively on Sarah, on the subtle nuances of her expression, the way her eyes held a deeper wisdom than he remembered. He, who usually sought data and facts, felt an unexplainable pull towards the human element of her work, a faint, almost imperceptible memory stirring deep within him, a resonance that he couldn't quite place. It was a sensation he rarely experienced, a feeling beyond the logical and the tangible. "A chronic illness?" Michael asked, finding his voice again, the question driven by a curiosity he couldn't fully articulate, a curiosity that felt deeper than mere politeness. Is it difficult?" He realized how inadequate the question sounded, how simplistic. Of course it was difficult. He was asking about a child fighting for their life. Sarah offered a wistful smile. "Every case presents its own challenges, Michael. But yes, some are profoundly difficult. This little boy, for instance, has faced more in his young life than most adults ever will. He's incredibly brave, though. They all are." Her words were punctuated by a quiet strength, a resilience that had clearly been forged in the crucible of countless heart-wrenching moments. He saw a depth in her eyes that had been absent in their youth, a wisdom earned through experience. He stood there, absorbing her words, the image of a child suffering, yet brave, etching itself into his mind. The conversation, which minutes ago had been a jarring confrontation with his past, now felt like a window into a world he had deliberately avoided, a world of raw human vulnerability and profound compassion. His own anxieties about Emily, while still present, suddenly felt less self-serving, now tinged with a broader understanding of the suffering that permeated these hospital walls. The initial shock of seeing Sarah had begun to recede, replaced by a complex tapestry of emotions: surprise, curiosity, and a faint, almost imperceptible thread of regret. He realized, with a sudden clarity that stung, that he knew nothing of the life she had built, the person she had become. His self-imposed exile from their shared past had left a gaping void, one he was only now truly acknowledging. The universe had a way of bringing things full circle, often at the most inconvenient yet necessary times. He had prided himself on moving forward, on never looking back. But perhaps, he mused, sometimes looking back was the only way to truly understand where you were going, or more importantly, where you had truly come from. The memory of their abrupt separation, the words he had uttered, the coldness he had displayed, began to surface, threatening to drag him back into the past. He braced himself, knowing that this unexpected reunion was far more than just a chance encounter. It was a reopening of a book he had slammed shut years ago, and he was about to read a chapter he had never anticipated. The quiet surprise in Sarah's voice, the way she had uttered his name, stirred a familiar ache within Michael. It was an ache he had long since convinced himself was gone, eradicated by the intoxicating balm of success and the relentless pursuit of more. He remembered, with painful clarity, the day he had ended things. The crisp autumn air, the vibrant leaves mirroring the chaos in his heart, the cold, calculated words he had used to sever their bond. He had told her she was holding him back, that his ambition required sacrifices she couldn't understand, that their paths were diverging too sharply for any hope of a shared future. It was a lie, or at least only half a truth. The other half was fear. Fear of commitment, fear of vulnerability, fear that her unwavering love would become a distraction from the singular, burning desire to prove himself to a world that had once dismissed him. He had watched her eyes fill with tears, her shoulders slump under the weight of his pronouncement, and then he had walked away, convincing himself it was for the best, for both of them. He had rationalized it as a necessary evil, a painful but essential step on his path to greatness. Yet, in the sterile, fluorescent lighting of this hospital corridor, confronted by the woman he had so carelessly discarded, those justifications felt flimsy, hollow. The empire he had built, the accolades he had collected, seemed to offer little comfort against the sudden, sharp recollection of her broken heart. "What are you doing here, Sarah?" he asked, his voice now steadier, though still laced with a fragile uncertainty. He searched her face, trying to decipher the unsaid, the years of experience etched around her eyes. Was there resentment there? A quiet bitterness he deserved? He braced himself for it, for the anger he knew he had earned. Sarah's gaze flickered, a momentary shadow crossing her features before she offered a small, almost wistful smile. "I'm a nurse, Michael. Been one for quite a while now. This is where I work." Her answer was direct, devoid of theatrics, yet it carried an unspoken weight, a hint of resilience forged through unseen challenges. Her tone conveyed no explicit blame, no overt recitation of grievances, but the quiet strength in her voice, the weary determination in her eyes, spoke volumes. Her life hadn't been easy since he left, that much was clear. The years had sculpted her into someone undeniably stronger, perhaps even more beautiful in her quiet resolve. She hadn't chased a life of luxury or fame. She had chosen a path of service, of quiet sacrifice, a stark contrast to his own trajectory. He imagined her days, filled with the raw realities of human suffering, with the quiet triumphs of healing, far removed from the high-stakes world of mergers and acquisitions he inhabited. A pang of something akin to shame, or perhaps regret, twisted in his gut. He had sought to conquer the world, while she had quietly dedicated herself to mending it. "A nurse," he repeated, the word tasting foreign on his tongue, a concept so far removed from his own experience. "That's noble, Sarah." It was inadequate, he knew, a feeble attempt to bridge the chasm of years and choices that separated them. He wanted to ask more, to delve into the intricacies of her life, to understand the path she had chosen and what had led her there. But he held back, sensing the unspoken boundaries, the delicate nature of their reunion. He sensed that pushing too hard might shatter the fragile peace that now existed between them. She nodded, her gaze drifting past him, down the bustling corridor. "It has its moments. It's challenging, but it's fulfilling." Then her eyes returned to his, a flicker of something he couldn't quite place. Empathy, a shared history, in their depths. "There's a boy on the pediatric floor," she began, her voice softening, losing some of its professional detachment. "His name is Alex. He's been here a long time, a chronic illness. He's a fighter, though. Sees more in a day than most adults do in a lifetime." Michael felt an inexplicable pull, a strange curiosity that transcended his own immediate anxieties about Emily. Was it Sarah's passion for her work, or something deeper, something dormant within him stirring to life? He found himself listening intently, captivated by the subtle shift in her demeanor as she spoke about her patient. It was as if a different light had been cast upon her, revealing a profound depth he had perhaps never fully appreciated, even in their youth. "He's had a rough go of it," she continued, a slight frown creasing her brow. "His situation, it's particularly challenging. We do what we can, but some battles are uphill all the way." She paused, her gaze direct, as if weighing something internally. "You know, sometimes, seeing the raw courage of these kids, it puts everything else into perspective." Michael nodded slowly, a knot forming in his stomach. The world he inhabited, the world of corporate power plays and ruthless ambition, suddenly seemed trivial, almost insignificant in comparison to the quiet heroism Sarah described. He wanted to understand, to see what she saw, to feel the profound connection that clearly animated her. Would you like to meet him?" Sarah asked, her voice gentle, almost tentative. "Sometimes a new face, a kind word, it can make a difference, and it might give you a glimpse into what keeps me going." The invitation hung in the air, unexpected and profound. Michael hesitated for only a moment. His sister was still in surgery, his world still teetered on the brink of uncertainty, but Sarah's offer resonated with an appeal he couldn't articulate, a deep-seated curiosity he couldn't ignore. Perhaps, he thought, seeing her world would help him understand the woman she had become, and by extension, perhaps even himself. "Yes," Michael said, his voice firm, a decision made. "I would." A strange sense of anticipation, laced with a familiar unease, settled over him as he prepared to step into a part of Sarah's life, a part of the world he had willfully chosen to abandon so long ago. He hadn't realized then how much richer his life might have been, how much more profound if he had chosen a different path, one that included her and the quiet, impactful work she clearly found so meaningful. The weight of their past hung heavy, but a new, unbidden curiosity now seemed to pull him forward. Michael, still grappling with the sheer impossibility of Sarah's sudden reappearance and the profound shift in her life's trajectory, found himself nodding almost numbly when she extended the quiet invitation to meet one of her patients. His mind was a maelstrom of conflicting thoughts and emotions, a chaotic jumble of past memories and a bewildering present. He was a man who planned every detail, every contingency. Yet here he was, adrift in the unpredictable currents of fate, steered by the very woman he had so carelessly left behind. The sterile scent of antiseptic, once a subtle background note, now seemed to cling to him, heavy and pervasive, as they began to walk. They moved away from the bustling main corridors, the noise of the emergency room slowly fading, replaced by a softer, more hushed atmosphere as they entered the pediatric wing. The walls here were painted in cheerful pastel colors, adorned with whimsical drawings and bright, comforting murals of animals and fantastical landscapes. It was a stark, almost jarring contrast to the austere, almost clinical adult sections Michael had navigated mere hours ago. The sounds changed too. Instead of hurried footsteps and hushed medical conversations, there were the distant giggles of children, the gentle whir of medical equipment, and the occasional tender murmur of a parent. This world was entirely new to him, a dimension of the hospital he hadn't even considered. He glanced at Sarah, walking beside him, her posture still imbued with that quiet dedication he had observed earlier. She moved with a purpose, a practiced ease that spoke volumes of her familiarity with these halls, with this very specific realm of healing. Her scrubs, once just a uniform, now seemed to embody an entire life devoted to care, a dedication so far removed from the cutthroat world he inhabited. The thought struck him. While he had been building an empire, she had been building lives, mending hearts, nurturing hope. The comparison felt like a sharp, unexpected jab to his conscience. "This is the pediatric ward," Sarah explained, her voice soft, almost a whisper, as if not to disturb the fragile peace of the children within. "It's different, more fragile sometimes, but also more resilient than you'd ever imagine." She smiled faintly, a genuine, unforced smile that reached her eyes, crinkling the corners. It was a smile that spoke of both joy and a deep, empathetic understanding of suffering. Michael felt a strange tightening in his chest, a realization of how much he truly didn't know about this woman, this stranger who was once so intimately familiar. As they approached a particular room, Sarah slowed, her hand gently resting on the door frame, a gesture of quiet reverence. "This is Alex's room," she murmured, her voice tinged with a delicate balance of affection and sorrow. "He's been here for a while. A chronic condition, very challenging." She paused, her gaze distant for a moment, lost in thought. His mother, she passed away a few years ago, and his father. A shadow crossed her face, brief but palpable. His father disappeared, entirely out of the picture. He's been here, essentially on his own, with the nurses and doctors as his surrogate family. Michael listened, a growing sense of unease coiling in his stomach. The story, though tragic, felt uncomfortably familiar in a way he couldn't quite place. He felt a fleeting pang of sympathy for the child, abandoned and alone, navigating a difficult illness without the anchoring presence of a parent. It was a loneliness he, in his own way, understood. "He's 13 now," Sarah continued, her voice regaining a measure of professional composure. "A really bright kid, despite everything, loves to read. We try to make his days as normal as possible, but it's hard. He needs stability, a family bond." She finally turned, her eyes meeting Michael's, a flicker of something he couldn't decipher within their depths. And then she uttered the words that would irrevocably shatter his carefully constructed reality, the words that would send his world spiraling into an abyss of disbelief and dawning horror. "His name is Alex," she repeated, her voice just a fraction softer, more weighted now. "Alex Sterling." The name hit Michael like a physical blow. Sterling, his surname, a name he rarely heard outside the context of his corporate empire, a name that signified power and success. But here, attached to a 13-year-old boy, abandoned and ill, it resonated with an entirely different, chilling echo. His mind raced, scrambling to make sense of the impossible coincidence. Sterling? Could it be simply a coincidence, a cruel twist of fate that two people with the same relatively common surname would end up in the same hospital, brought together by Sarah? His gaze instinctively moved past Sarah, drawn by an invisible, undeniable force, towards the partially open doorway of Alex's room. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic, desperate rhythm. He slowly, almost fearfully, peered into the sanitized space, And there he was. A boy, pale and thin, lay propped up in the hospital bed, a book open on his lap, his eyes fixed on the pages. He was indeed 13, maybe a little small for his age, but the intelligence in his gaze was unmistakable, even from a distance. And then, as the boy shifted slightly, turning his head towards the light, Michael saw it. The eyes. They were undeniably his own. The same deep-set, intense blue, framed by long, dark lashes. And the chin. Strong, resolute, a mirror image of the one he saw in the reflection every morning. A cold dread, colder than any winter chill, seeped into Michael's bones, paralyzing him. It was a recognition so profound, so utterly, undeniably absolute, that it transcended mere resemblance. It was a connection that vibrated through his very being, a biological imperative that screamed the truth. This boy, this sick, abandoned 13-year-old child, whose name was Alex Sterling. This was not just a patient. This was not just a coincidence. This was his son, the son he never knew existed, the son Sarah had been pregnant with all those years ago when he had walked away, convinced that ambition and success were the only paths to a meaningful life. The world tilted on its axis, a silent, cataclysmic shift within his soul. Every assumption he had ever made, every carefully constructed belief about his life, shattered into a million irreparable pieces. Michael's breath hitched, a strangled gasp escaping his lips as the full, horrifying magnitude of the truth crashed down upon him. He stumbled back a step, hands instinctively reaching out, as if to steady himself against an invisible force. The sterile hospital corridor, moments ago a path of mundane worries, now felt like the epicenter of an emotional earthquake. The boy's face, Alex's face, burned into his vision, a stark, undeniable testament to a past he had so arrogantly discarded. The blue eyes, the strong chin, the subtle curve of the lips. It was all him, undeniably, terrifyingly him. His own flesh and blood, a life he had unwittingly created and then utterly abandoned. He turned to Sarah, his face a mask of disbelief, anger, and a nascent, overwhelming grief. His voice, when it finally emerged, was a raw, guttural whisper, laced with an accusation that tore at his own throat. "Why?" he rasped, the single word loaded with 14 years of unanswered questions, of missed moments, of a life he never knew existed. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you keep him from me?" The accusation, though born of pure shock, was sharp, unthinking, a defensive lash-out against a reality too painful to process. Every fiber of his being screamed for an explanation, for an answer that could somehow rationalize this catastrophic absence. Sarah met his gaze. Her eyes, though filled with an unmistakable sorrow, held no trace of fear or apology. Her face, etched with the quiet dignity of someone who had carried an immense burden alone for too long, remained steadfast. She didn't flinch, didn't cower. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm, measured, a stark contrast to the tumultuous storm raging within Michael. "I tried, Michael," she began, her words cutting through the emotional static in the air like a surgeon's precise incision. After you left, after everything ended, I tried to reach you. Your numbers had changed. Your assistant told me you were traveling, too busy with your new ventures, your new life. You were building your empire, moving on." There was no bitterness in her tone, only a weary recounting of facts. "I left messages more than once, desperate to tell you." She paused, her gaze dropping to Alex's room for a brief moment before returning to Michael, her eyes now holding a quiet strength that both humbled and infuriated him. "But you never called back. You never reached out." And then, As the weeks turned into months, and Alex grew inside me, I started to see things differently. I saw how easily you had walked away from us, from me. I realized that if you truly wanted to be in my life, in our lives, you would have found a way. You would have made time, no matter how busy you were. Her voice remained steady, each word a carefully placed stone on the path of their shared, fractured history. I decided then, she continued, her chin lifting ever so slightly, that Alex deserved a life free from that kind of uncertainty, from a father who might or might not want him. He deserved stability, certainty, and unconditional love. I couldn't provide him with the money or the fame, but I could give him my whole heart. I protected him, Michael. I protected him from a man who, by all accounts, had made it clear he didn't want them. The implication hung heavy in the air, a silent indictment that Michael couldn't refute. He had been driven by ambition, yes, by a desire to prove himself, but he had also been callously dismissive, ruthlessly efficient in severing ties he deemed inconvenient or hindering to his upward trajectory. I never asked for anything, Sarah added, her voice softening slightly, a hint of vulnerability creeping in. I wanted to make my own way. I finished nursing school, I worked hard, and I dedicated myself to Alex. He is my world, Michael, my entire world. The sheer weight of her sacrifice, of her unwavering dedication, pressed down on Michael, suffocating him with guilt. He had squandered his youth chasing an illusion of success, an empire built on a foundation of emptiness, while she had quietly, courageously, built a real one. A family, a purpose, a love that transcended all material wealth. Michael's internal world was a kaleidoscope of shattered glass. The shock of Alex's existence was quickly giving way to a searing, agonizing guilt. Every lavish party, every opulent purchase, every self-congratulatory moment of his past now felt tainted, grotesque. He had prided himself on his self-made status, on his journey from humble beginnings to a titan of industry. But what kind of man was he if, in his relentless ascent, he had trampled over the most precious thing life could offer him? He had yearned for connection, for meaning beyond the boardroom, and here it was, staring him in the face. A son, sick and alone, a testament to his monumental failure as a human being. The devastating consequences of his past decisions unfolded before him with brutal clarity. The ambition that had once been his driving force now felt hollow, a cruel trick of fate. He saw the impact of his absence, not just on Sarah, but more importantly, on Alex. A young boy in a hospital bed fighting for his life, without the comfort of a father's presence. He had unknowingly caused such profound pain, such an unforgivable void. He had missed birthdays, first steps, scraped knees, bedtime stories, an entire childhood, a lifetime of memories, irrevocably lost. The life he could have had with his son, the laughter, the guidance, the simple joy of fatherhood, stretched out before him as a vast, empty canyon. A desperate, aching need to atone, to somehow rewind time and rectify his catastrophic mistakes, surged through him. It was a need so powerful it threatened to consume him whole. He looked at Alex again, a silent promise forming in the depths of his shattered heart. He didn't know how, but he knew, with an absolute certainty, that he had to make this right. He had to prove to Alex and to Sarah that the man who walked away all those years ago was not the man standing here now. The journey ahead would be long, arduous, and fraught with unimaginable challenges, but for the first time in a very long time, Michael Sterling felt a purpose that transcended the pursuit of wealth. It was a purpose rooted in redemption, in love, and in the desperate hope of reclaiming the fragmented pieces of a life he had so carelessly broken. Michael's world, once defined by the sharp edges of ambition and the cold logic of profit, now lay in fragments at his feet. The revelation of Alex, his son, a tangible consequence of his youthful abandonment, had irrevocably altered his perception of everything. Humbled and heartbroken, he embarked upon a long, arduous journey of reconciliation. He didn't know where to begin, but the intense, unshakable connection he felt to Alex was a compass guiding his every move. His immediate priority became understanding Alex's condition. He devoured medical reports, consulted specialists, and spent countless hours in the hospital, no longer the detached millionaire, but a father, desperate to comprehend and alleviate his son's suffering. He learned about every nuanced detail of Alex's chronic illness, the daily struggles, the small victories, the ever-present shadow of uncertainty. He sat by Alex's bedside, reading to him from the very books Alex cherished, listening to his quiet observations, trying to bridge the chasm of 13 lost years with every shared moment. There were no grand gestures, just steady, unwavering presence. He witnessed Sarah's unwavering dedication firsthand, the quiet strength she exuded, the profound love she showered upon their son. He supported her, both emotionally and financially, ensuring Alex received the best available care, but always with a deep respect for her independence. Sarah, though still wary, slowly began to let down her guard, recognizing the genuine remorse and commitment in Michael's eyes. Their past was an open wound, but their shared love for Alex began to act as a powerful balm. Amidst this profound personal upheaval, a small beacon of hope emerged. Emily, his beloved sister, recovered fully from her surgery, her vibrant spirit shining through the lingering weakness. Her laughter, once a distant echo in the sterile hospital corridors, now filled Michael's life with renewed joy, a tangible reminder of the resilience of family. Her recovery allowed Michael to fully immerse himself in his new reality, a life no longer solely dictated by board meetings and market trends. The relentless pursuit of wealth that had once consumed him now felt hollow, an empty pursuit compared to the rich tapestry of emotion and responsibility he now embraced. He began to systematically dismantle parts of his empire, selling off non-essential businesses, streamlining his operations. The move wasn't about divestment, it was about reinvestment into his family, into his community, into a life with greater purpose. He started dedicating more of his time and resources to philanthropic causes, especially those related to pediatric care, establishing foundations in Alex's name, ensuring that other children facing similar battles would have resources and support that Alex had initially lacked. The romantic relationship between Michael and Sarah remained a delicate, unresolved thread. They did not rekindle their former flame, the scars of the past running too deep for an easy return. Instead, a new, stronger bond formed between them, a deep, respectful co-parenting relationship united by their profound and unconditional love for Alex. They learned to communicate, to trust, to lean on each other, finding an unexpected harmony in their shared devotion. They celebrated Alex's small improvements with quiet joy and faced setbacks with a united front. Michael, the tech mogul who had built an empire from nothing, finally understood true wealth. It wasn't measured in balance sheets or market cap. It was measured in the warmth of Alex's hand in his, the quiet understanding in Sarah's eyes, the vibrant laughter of his sister. It was found in the connections he had nearly lost, the family he had unknowingly abandoned, and the second chance he had been given. His journey was not complete, but he had found his true north. He was no longer just a millionaire. He was a father, a brother, a man finally at peace with his past and profoundly grateful for his future. The sterile hospital halls, once a symbol of fear and regret, had become the unlikely birthplace of his redemption and the venue for the greatest, most unexpected discovery of his life. If this story touched your heart, if it made you pause and reflect on the hidden depths of connection and the unexpected turns of fate, please give it a thumbs up. Share it with someone who needs to hear this powerful message of second chances and the true meaning of family. And don't forget to click that notification bell so you won't miss our next compelling story, where we delve into another narrative that promises to resonate deep within your soul.